Dracula by Bram Stoker. Read for Mermaids by Gabriel Solstricker. Chapter 20. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 1st of October, evening. I found Thomas Snelling in his house at Bethnal Green, but unhappily he was not in a condition to remember anything. The very prospect of beer which my expected coming had opened to him had proved too much, and he had begun too early on his expected debauch. I learned, however, from his wife, who seemed a decent, poor soul, that he was only the assistant to Smollett, who, of the two mates, was a responsible person. So I drove off to Walworth and found Mr. Joseph Smollett at home in his shirt sleeves, taking a late tea out of a saucer. He is a decent, intelligent fellow, distinctly a good, reliable type of workman, with a headpiece of his own. He remembered all about the incident of the boxes, and from a wonderful dog-eared notebook, which he produced from some mysterious receptacle about the seat of his trousers, which had been a hieroglyphical entries of thick, half-obliterated pencil, he gave me the destinations of the boxes. There, he said, 6 in the cartload, which he took from Carfax and left at 197 Jackson Street, Mile End, New Town, and another 6, which he deposited at Jamaica Lane, Bermondsey. If then the Count meant to scatter these ghastly refuges of his over London, these places were chosen as the first of delivery, so that he might later distribute them more fully. The systematic manner in which this was done made me think that he could not mean to confine himself to 2 sides of London. He was now fixed on the far east of the northern shore, on the east of the southern shore, and on the south. The north and west were surely never meant to be left out of his diabolical scheme, let alone the city itself, and the very heart of fashionable London, in the southwest and west. I went back to Smollett and asked him if he could tell us if any other boxes had been taken from Carfax. He replied, "Well, governor, you've treated me very handsome. I'd given him half a sovereign. I'll tell you all I know. I heard from a man by the name of Bloxham say 4 nights ago in Aaron Elms, in Pinch's Alley, how he and his mate had a red dusty job in an old house at Perfect. There ain't a many such jobs as this here, and I'm thinking that maybe Sam Bloxham can tell you something." I asked if he could tell me where to find him. I told him that if he could get me the address, it would be worth another half sovereign to him. So he gulped down the rest of his tea and stood, saying that he was going to begin the search then and there. At the door he stopped and said, "Look here, governor, there ain't no sense in keeping you here. I might find Sam soon, or I mayn't. But anyhow, he ain't likely to be away to tell you much tonight. Sam is a rare one when he starts on the booze. If you can give me an envelope with a stamp on it, I'll put your address on it. I'll find out where Sam is found and post you tonight. But you'd better be up after him soon in the morning, or maybe you won't catch him. For Sam gets off Main early, never mind the booze the night before." This was all practical, so one of the children went off with a penny to buy an envelope, a sheet of paper, and keep the change. When she came back, I addressed the envelope and stamped it, and when Smollett had again faithfully promised to post the address when found, I took my way home. We're on track, anyhow. I'm tired tonight and want sleep. Mina is fast asleep and looks a little too pale. Her eyes look as though she'd been crying. Poor dear, I've no doubt it frets her to be kept in the dark. It may make her doubly anxious about me and the others, but it is best as it is. It is better to be disappointed and worried in such a way now than to have her nerve broken. The doctors were quite right to insist on keeping her out of this dreadful business. I must be firm, for on me this particular burden of silence must rest. Indeed, it may not be a hard task after all, for she herself has become reticent on the subject, and has not spoken of the Count or his doings ever since we told her of our decision. 2nd of October, evening. A long and trying and exciting day. By the first post, I got my directed envelope with a dirty scrap of paper enclosed, which was written with a carpenter's pencil in a scrawling hand. Sam Bloxham, Corcoran's 4, Potters Court, Bartle Street, Walworth. Ask for the deputy. I got the letter in bed and rose without waking Mina. She looked heavy and sleepy and pale, and far from well. I determined not to wake her, but that, when I should return from this new search, I would arrange for her going back to Exeter. I think she would be happier in our own home, with her daily tasks to interest her, than in being here amongst us, in ignorance. I only saw Dr. Seward for a moment, and told him where I was off to, promising to come back and tell the rest so soon as I would have found out anything. I drove to Walworth, and found, with some difficulty, Potter's Court. Mr. Smollett's spelling misled me, and I asked for Potter's Court instead of Potter's Court. However, when I had found it, I had no difficulty in discovering Corcoran's lodging house. When I asked the man who came to the door for the deputy, he shook his head and said, "Dunno him. There ain't no such person here. I never heard of him in my bloomin' days. Don't believe there ain't anyone of this kind living here or anywheres." I took out Smollett's letter, and as I read it, it seemed to me that the lesson of the spelling of the name of the court might guide me. "What are you?" I asked. "I'm the deputy," he answered. Quick reader's note here. The letter he received is intentionally misspelled, and then the man who answered the door, his pronunciation is written literally, so yeah, so there's a misunderstanding that's meant to have happened between the characters here, but it doesn't come very well when I read it aloud, so that's how it is. "I'm the deputy," he answered. I saw at once that I was on the right track. Phonetic spelling had again misled me. The half-crown tip put the deputy's knowledge at my disposal, and I learned that Mr. Bloxham, who had slept off the remains of his beer on the previous night at Corcoran's, had left for his work at Poplar at 5 o'clock that morning. He could not tell me where the place of work was situated, but he had a vague idea that it was some kind of newfangled warehouse. With this slender clue, I had to start for Poplar. It was 12 o'clock before I got any satisfactory hint of such a building, and this I got at a coffee shop where some workmen were having dinner. One of these suggested that there was being erected at Cross Angel Street a new cold storage building, and as this suited the condition of a newfangled warehouse, I at once drove to it. An interview with a surly gatekeeper and a surlier foreman, both of whom were appeased with my coin of the realm, put me on the track of Bloxham. He was sent for on my suggesting that I was willing to pay for his day's wages to his foreman for the privilege of asking him a few questions on a private matter. He was a smart enough fellow, though rough of speech and bearing. When I had promised to pay for his information and giving him an earnest, he told me that he had made 2 journeys between Carfax and a house in Piccadilly, and had taken from this house to the latter 9 great boxes, main heavy ones, with a horse and cart hired by him for this purpose. I asked him if he could tell me the number of the house in Piccadilly, to which he replied, "Well, governor, I forget the number, but it was only a few doors from a big white church or something of that kind. Not long built. It was a dusty old house too, though nothing to the dustiness of the house we took the bloomin' boxes from." "How did you get into the houses if they were both empty?" "There was the old party that engaged me waiting in the house at Burfleet. He helped me to lift the boxes and put them into the dray. Curse me, he was the strongest chap I ever struck, and him an old fella with a white moustache. One thing you'd think he couldn't grow a shadow." How this phrase thrilled through me. Well, that's a difficult phrasing. One moment. How this phrase thrilled through me. Why, he took his end of the boxes like they were pounds of tea. Me a puffing and blowing afore I could make up in mine anyhow, and I'm no chicken neither. "How'd you get to the house in Piccadilly?" I asked. "He was there too. Must have started off and got there afore me. For when I rung the bell, he came and opened the door himself, helped me carry the boxes into the hall." "The whole 9? I asked. "Yes. There was 5 in the first load and 4 in the second. It was main dry work, and I don't all remember how I got 'em." I interrupted him. "Were the boxes left in the hall?" "Yes, it was big hall. Nothing else in it." I made one more attempt to further matters. "You didn't have any key?" "No, never used no key or nothing. The old gent, he opened the door himself, shut it again when I drove off. I don't remember the last time, but that was the beer." "And you can't remember the number of the house?" "No, sir. But you needn't have no difficulty about that. It's an iron with a stone front with a bow on it, and I steps up to the door. I know them steps, having had to carry the boxes with 3 loafers what come round to earn a copper. The old gent gave 'em shillings, and they seen they got so much they wanted more. But he took one of them by the shoulder and was like to throw him down the steps, till the lot of them went away cussing. I thought with this description I could find the house, so, having paid him for his information, I started off for Piccadilly. I had gained a new painful experience. The Count could, it was evident, handle the earth boxes himself. If so, time was precious, for now that he had achieved a certain amount of distribution, he could, by choosing his own time, complete the task unobserved. At Piccadilly Circus, I discharged my cab and walked westward. Beyond the Junior Constitutional, I came across the house described. I was satisfied that this was the next of the lairs arranged by Dracula. The house looked as though it had been long untenanted. The windows were encrusted with dust. The shutters were up. All the framework was black with time, and from the iron the paint had mostly scaled away. It was evident that up lately there had been a large notice board in front of the balcony. It had, however, been roughly torn away, the uprights which had supported it still remaining. Behind the walls of the balcony, I saw that there were some loose boards whose raw edges looked white. I would have given a good deal to see the notice board intact, as it would perhaps have given some clue as to the ownership of the house. I remembered my experience of investigation and purchase of Carfax, and I could not but feel that if I could find the former owner, there might be some means discovered of gaining access to the house. There was, at present, nothing to be learned for the Piccadilly side, and nothing could be done, so I went round to the back to see if anything could be gathered from the quarter. The mews were active, the Piccadilly houses being mostly in occupation. I asked for one or two of the grooms and helpers whom I saw around if they could tell me anything about the empty house. One of them said he heard that it had lately been taken, but couldn't say from whom. He told me, however, that up to the very lately there had been a notice board of "for sale" up, and that perhaps Mitchell, Sons and Candy, the house agents, could tell me something, as he thought he remembered seeing the name of that firm on the board. I did not wish to seem too eager, or to let my informant know or guess too much, so, thanking him in the usual manner, I strolled away. It was now growing dusk. The autumn night was closing in, and I did not lose any time. Having learned the address of Mitchell, Sons and Candy from a directory at the Barclay, I was soon at their office in Sackville Street. The gentleman who saw me was particularly suave in manner, but uncommunicative in equal proportion. Having told me that the Piccadilly house, which throughout our interview he called a mansion, was sold, he considered my business as concluded. When I asked who had purchased it, he opened his eyes a thought wider and paused for a few seconds before replying, "It is sold, sir." "Pardon me," I said, with equal politeness, "but I have a special reason for wishing to know who purchased it." Again he paused longer, raised his eyebrows more, and said, "It is sold, sir." A laconic reply. "Surely," I said, "you do not mind letting me know so much." "But I do mind," he answered. "The affairs of our clients are absolutely safe in the hands of Mitchell, Sons and Candy." This was manifestly a prig of the first water, and there was no use arguing with him. I thought I had best meet him on his own ground, so I said, "Your clients, sir, are happy in having so resolute a guardian of their confidence. I am myself a professional man." I handed him my card. In this instance, I am not prompted by curiosity. I act on the part of Lord Godalming, who wishes to know something of the property which has, he understood, been lately for sale. These words put a different complexion on affairs. He said, "I would like to oblige you if I could, Mr. Harker, and especially would I like to oblige his lordship. We once carried out a small matter of renting some chambers for him when he was the Honourable Arthur Holmwood. If you will let me have his lordship's address, I will consult the house on the subject, and will, in any case, communicate with his lordship by tonight's post. It will be a pleasure if we can so far deviate from our rules as to give the required information to his lordship." I wanted to secure a friend and not make an enemy, so I thanked him, gave the address of Dr. Seward's, and came away. It was now dark, and I was tired and hungry. I got a cup of tea at the Aerated Bread Company and came down to Purfleet by the next train. I'm just going to do a minor historical note here, for anyone who's listening. The Aerated Bread Company is actually quite famous. It doesn't exist anymore, at least I don't think it does anymore. But they had a business in Victorian times of selling bread that, instead of being leavened by yeast, as is normal for bread, it was leavened by... No, I can't remember exactly what. I think it was carbon dioxide. It was, they had a chemical process they used to kind of inflate bread. This is weird because I saw a documentary about it once, but the idea was that they tried to convince people that because yeast was like a culture, that like yeasty bread was like diseased and like not clean, and they were selling good clean bread that was made with carbon dioxide or some other gas in order to get it to rise. But obviously this didn't catch on. It was a strange and quite short-lived fad. But yeah, that's what that's about, the aerated bread company. Yeah, I saw a documentary about it once. It was about bread, funny enough, in the UK. And I just remember that being a strange thing. Anyway, I'll carry on. I found all the others at home. Mina was looking tired and pale, but she made a gallant effort to be bright and cheerful. It wrung my heart to think that I had had to keep anything from her, and so caused her inquietude. Inquietude, that's an interesting word. Okay. Thank God, this will be the last night of her looking on at our conferences, and the feeling the sting of our not showing our confidence. It took all my courage to hold the wise resolution of keeping her out of our grim task. She seems somehow more reconciled, or else the very subject has become repugnant to her. For when any accidental allusion is made, she shudders. I am glad we made our resolution in time, as with such feeling as this, our growing knowledge will be torture to her. I could not tell the others of our day's discovery till we were alone, so after dinner, followed by a little music to save appearances even amongst ourselves, I took Mina to her room and left her to bed. The dear girl was more affectionate with me than ever, and clung to me as though she would detain me. But there was much to be talked of, and I came away. Thank God, the ceasing of telling things has made no difference between us. When I came down again, I found the others all gathered round the fire in the study. In the train, I'd written my diary so far, and I simply read it off to them, as the best means of letting them get abreast of my own information. When I'd finished, Van Helsing said, "This has been a great day's work, friend Jonathan. Doubtless we are on the track of the missing boxes. If we find them all in that house, then our work is near the end. But if there be some missing, we must search until we find them. Then we will make our final coup and hunt the wretch to his real death." We all sat silent a while, and at once Mr. Morris spoke. "Say, how are we going to get into that house?" "We got into the other," answered Lord Godalming quickly. "But, Aunt, this is different. We broke house at Carfax, but we had night and a walled park to protect us. It'll be a mighty different thing to commit burglary in Piccadilly, by day or night. I confess I don't know how we're going to get it in, unless that agency duck can find us a key of some sort. Perhaps we shall know when you get the letter in the morning." Lord Godalming's brows contracted, and he stood up and walked from the room. By and by he stopped and said, turning from one to another of us, "Quincy's head is level. This burglary business is getting serious. We got off once, all right, but we now have a rare job on hand, unless we can find the Count's key basket. As nothing could be done before morning, and as it would be at least advisable to wait till Lord Godalming should hear from Mitchell's, we decided not to take any active step before breakfast time. For a good while we sat and smoked, discussed the matter and its various lights and bearings. I took the opportunity of bringing this diary right up at the moment. I took the opportunity of bringing this diary right up to the moment. I'm very sleepy and shall go to bed. Just a line. Mina sleeps soundly and her breathing is regular. Her forehead is puckered up to little wrinkles, though. She thinks that even in her sleep. She is still too pale, but does not look so haggard as she did this morning. Tomorrow will, I hope, mend this. She will be herself at home in Exeter. Oh, but I am sleepy. Dr. Seward's Diary, 1st of October. I am puzzled afresh about Renfield. His moods change so rapidly that I find it difficult to keep touch of them, and as they always mean something more than his own well-being, they form more of an interesting study. This morning when I went to see him after his repulse of Van Helsing, his manner was that of a man commanding destiny. He was, in fact, commanding destiny subjectively. He did not really care for any of the things of mere earth. He was in the clouds and looked down upon all the weaknesses and wants of poor mortals. I thought I would improve the occasion and learn something, so I asked him, "What about the flies these times?" He smiled on me in a manner, superior sort of way. Such a smile would have become the face of Malvolio. As he answered me, "The fly, my dear sir, has one striking feature. Its wings are atypical of the aerial powers of the psychic faculties. The ancients did well when they typified the soul as a butterfly." I thought I would push his analogy to its utmost logically, so I said, quickly, "Oh, it is a soul you are after now, is it?" His madness foiled his reason, and a puzzled look spread over his face, as, shaking his head with a decision which I had seldom seen in him, he said, "Oh, no, no. I want no souls. Life is all I want." Here he brightened up. "I'm pretty indifferent about it at present. Life is all right. I have all I want. You must get a new patient, doctor, if you wish to study zoophagy." This puzzled me a little, so I drew him on. "Then you command life. You are a god, I suppose." He smiled with an ineffably benign superiority. "Oh no. Far be it from me to arrogate myself to the attributes of deity. I'm not even concerned in his especially spiritual doings. If I may state my intellectual position, I am, so far as concerns things purely terrestrial, somewhat in the position of which Enoch occupied spiritually." This was a poser to me. I could not at the moment recall Enoch's appositeness, so I had to ask a simple question, though I felt by doing so I was lowering myself in the eyes of the lunatic. "And why by Enoch?" "Because he walked with God." I could not see the analogy, but did not like to admit it, so I harked back to what he had denied. "So you don't care about life, and you don't want souls. Why not?" I put my question quickly and somewhat sternly, on purpose to disconcert him. The effort succeeded. For an instant he unconsciously relapsed into his old servile manner, bent low before me and fawned upon me as he replied, "I don't want any souls. Indeed, I don't. I couldn't use them if I had them. There would be no manner of use to me. I couldn't eat them, or—" He suddenly stopped, and the old cunning look spread over his face, like a windsweep on the surface of the water. "And doctor, as to life, what is it, after all? When you've got all you require, and you know that you will never want, That is all. I have friends, good friends, like you, Dr. Seward. This was said with a leer of inexpressible cunning. I know that I shall never lack the means of life. I think that through the cloudiness of his insanity, he saw some antagonism in me, for at once he fell back on the last refuge, such as he, a dogged silence. After a short time, I saw that for present, it was useless to speak to him. He was sulky, so I came away. Later in the day, he sent for me. Ordinarily, I would not come without special reason, but just at present, I'm so interested in him that I would gladly make an effort. Besides, I'm glad to have anything to pass the time. Harker is out, following up clues, and so are Lord Godalming and Quincy. Van Helsing sits in my study, poring over a record prepared by the Harkers. He seems to think that by accurate knowledge of all details he will light on some clue. He does not wish to be disturbed in the work without cause. I would have taken him with me to see the patient, only I thought that after his last repulse he might not care to go again. There was also another reason. Renfield might not speak so freely before a third person as when he and I were alone. I found him sitting out in the middle of the floor on his stool, a pose which is generally indicative of some mental energy on his part. Sorry about that, chat. When I came in, he said at once, though the question had been waiting on his lips, "What about souls?" It was evident then my surmise had been correct. Unconscious cerebration was doing its work, even with the lunatic. I determined to have the matter out. "What about them yourself?" I asked. He did not reply for a moment, but looked all around him, up and down, as though he expected to find some inspiration for an answer. "I don't want souls," he said, in a feeble, apologetic way. The matter seemed to prey on his mind, so I determined to use it. To be cruel, to be kind. So I said, "You like life, and you want life." "Oh yes. But that is all right. You needn't worry about that." "But," I asked, "how are we to get life without getting the soul also?" This seemed to puzzle him, so I followed it up. "A nice time you'll have, sometime when you're flying out there with the souls of thousands of flies and spiders, birds and cats buzzing and twittering and mooring all around you. You've got their lives, you know, and you must put up with their souls." Something seemed to affect his imagination, for he put his fingers in his ears and shut his eyes, screwing them up tightly as a small boy does when his face is being soaped. There was something pathetic in it that had touched me. It also gave me a lesson, for it seemed that before me was a child, only a child, though the features were worn and the stubble on the jaws was white. It was evident that he was undergoing some process of mental disturbance, and knowing how his past moods had interpreted things seemingly foreign to himself, I thought that I would enter into his mind as well as I could and go with him. The first step was to restore confidence, so I asked him, speaking pretty loud so he could hear me through his closed ears, "Would you like some sugar to get your flies round again?" He seemed to wake up all at once and shook his head. With a laugh, he replied, "Not much. Flies are poor things, after all." After a pause, he added, "But I don't want their souls buzzing around me, all the same." "Or spiders," I went on. "Blow spiders. What's the use of spiders? There isn't anything in them to eat or... He stopped suddenly, as though reminded of a forbidden topic. So, I thought to myself. This is the second time you've stopped at the word drink. What does that mean? Renfield himself was aware of having made a lapse, for he hurried on, as though to distract my attention. I don't take any stock in such matters. Rats and mice and such small deer, as Shakespeare has it. Chicken feed of the larder, they might be called. I'm past all that nonsense. You might as well ask a man to eat molecules with a pair of chopsticks, as so to try and interest me in the lesser carnivora, when I know what is before me. I see, I said. You want big things you can make your teeth meet in. How'd you like to breakfast on an elephant? What ridiculous nonsense you talk. He was getting too wide awake, so I thought I would press him hard. I wonder, I said reflectively, what an elephant's soul is like. The effect I desired was obtained, for at once he fell from his high horse and became a child again. I don't want an elephant's soul, or any soul at all, he said. For a few moments he sat despondently. Suddenly he jumped to his feet, with his eyes blazing and all the signs of intense cerebral excitement. To hell with you and your souls, he shouted. Why do you plague me about souls? I haven't got enough to worry and pain and distract me already without thinking of souls. He looked so hostile that I thought he was in for another homicidal fit, so I blew my whistle. The instant, however, I did so, he became calm and said, apologetically, Forgive me, Doctor. I forgot myself. You do not need any help. I'm so worried in my mind that I'm apt to be irritable. If only you knew the problem that I have to face, and that I am working out, you would pity and tolerate and pardon me. Pray, do not put me in a strait waistcoat. I want to think that I cannot freely think when my body is confined. I'm sure you understand. He had evidently self-control, so when the attendants came, I told them not to mind, and they withdrew. Renfield watched them go. When the door was closed, he said, with considerable dignity and sweetness, Dr. Seward, you have been very considerate towards me. Believe me that I am very, very grateful to you. I thought it well to leave him in this mood, and so I came away. There is certainly something to ponder over this man's state. Several points seem to make what the American interviewer calls a story, if one could only get them in the proper order. Here they are. Will not mention drinking. Fears the thought of being burdened with the soul of anything. Has no dread of wanting life in the future. Despises the meaner forms of life altogether, though he dreads being haunted by their souls. Logically, all these things point one way. He has assurance of some kind that he will acquire some higher life. He dreads the consequence, the burden of a soul. Then it is a human life he looks to. And the assurance? Merciful God, the Count has been to him, and there is some new scheme of terror afoot. Later, I went round after my round to Van Helsing and told him of my suspicion. He grew very grave, and after thinking the matter over for a while, he asked me to take him to Renfield. I did so. As we came to the door, we heard the lunatic within singing gaily, as he used to do at a time which now seems so long ago. When we entered, we saw with amazement that he had spread out his sugar as if at old, and the flies, lethargic with the autumn, were beginning to buzz into the room. We tried to make him talk of the subject of our previous conversation, but he would not attend. He went on with his singing, just as though we had not been present. He'd got a scrap of paper and was folding it into a notebook. We'd come away as ignorant as we went in. He's a curious case indeed. We must watch him tonight. Letter: Mitchell, Sons and Candy to Lord Godalming, 1st of October. My lord, we are at all times only too happy to meet your wishes. We beg, with regard to the desire of your lordship, expressed by Mr. Harker on your behalf, to supply the following information concerning the sale and purchase of number 347 Piccadilly. The original vendors are the executors of the late Archibald Winter Suffield. The purchaser is a foreign nobleman, Count de Ville, who effected the purchase himself, paying the purchase money in notes over the counter. If your lordship will pardon us using so vulgar an expression. Beyond this, we know nothing whatsoever of him. We are, my lord, your lordship's humble servants, Mitchell, Sons and Candy. Dr. Seward's Diary, 2nd of October. I placed a man in the corridor last night and told him to make an accurate note of any sound he might hear from Renfield's room, and gave him instructions that if there were anything strange, he was to call me. After dinner, when we had all gathered round the fire in the study, Mrs. Harker having gone to bed, we discussed the attempts and discoveries of the day. Harker was the only one who had any result, and we are in great hopes that his clue may be an important one. Before going to bed, I went round Before going to bed, I went round to the patient's room and looked in through the observation trap. He was sleeping soundly, and his heart rose and fell with regular respiration. This morning, the man on duty reported to me that a little after midnight, he was restless and kept saying his prayers somewhat loudly. I asked him if that was all. He replied it was all that he heard. There was something about his manner so suspicious that I asked him point blank if he had been asleep. He denied sleep, but admitted to having dozed for a while. It is too bad that men cannot be trusted unless they are watched. Today Harker is out following up his clue, and Aunt and Quincy are looking after horses. Godalming thinks that it would be well to have horses always in readiness, for when we get the information which we seek, there will be no time to lose. We must sterilize all the imported earth between sunrise and sunset. We shall thus catch the Count at his weakest and without refuge to fly to. Van Helsing is off to the British Museum, looking up some authorities on ancient medicine. The old physicians took account of things which their followers do not accept, and the professor is searching for witch and demon cures, which may be useful to us later. I sometimes think we must all be mad, and that we shall wake to sanity in strait waistcoats. Later. We have met again. We seem at last to be on the track, and our work of tomorrow may be the beginning of the end. I wonder if Renfield's quiet has anything to do with this. His moods have so followed the doings of the Count that the coming destruction of the monster may be carried to him in some subtle way. If we could only get some hint as to what passed his mind between the time of my argument with him today and his resumption of fly catching, it might afford us a valuable clue. He's now seemingly quiet for a spell. Is he? That wild yell seemed to come from his room. The attendant came bursting into my room and told me that Renfield had somehow met with an accident. He had heard him yell when he went to find. Sorry, unusually structured sentence. 1 second. The attendant came bursting into my room and told me that Renfield had somehow met with an accident. He had heard him yell, and when he went to him, found him lying on his face on the floor, covered with blood. I must go at once. And thus concludes Chapter 20. So I'm just going to turn down the music here. So I'll be dividing up these chapters for the vaults. So for the purposes of this, I just want to explain what's going on this month. So I am streaming and playing various spooky things, including this read-through of Dracula by Bram Stoker. And this is all in support of mermaids. So mermaids are a fantastic charity that supports trans, gender diverse and non-binary youth. They have various different initiatives that they support, I guess. They promote. Let's go with that. They promote. They have a helpline for trans youth for advice. They also provide support for families with trans children and adolescents. And they advocate for trans people in society and those sorts of related causes. Which obviously is a very important thing. Well, sadly, it's a very important thing these days. In an era when trans people are culturally seemingly demonized and othered and vilified for no good reason. So, they need groups to advocate for them, and mermaids do a lot of work in that area too. So, they really do fantastic work. I strongly recommend checking them out. But the campaign is up on Tiltify, and the link is in the chat for the people who are here right now. If you are watching the VODs, it will be in the description up here or down there or somewhere. It'll be on screen. And yes, it's a link to Tiltify, and at that link there's more details about the campaign and also about the work that mermaids do. What I would say, this is something that came up from someone. The target for the campaign is £1,000. Now, obviously, we're nearly at the end of October. We've raised £110, which is marvelous. Thank you, everyone, for donating who has. But obviously, we're not on cost to raise £1,000, but that's fine. The reason I mentioned this is someone got in touch and thought that it might be like Kickstarter, where do we have to raise the £1,000 for them to get the money? No. They receive every donation. It's just that when you create a Tiltify campaign, you have to set a target, and I didn't know what to put, so I just set £1,000 because it just seemed like a nice round number. So don't worry, if you want to donate, then they will receive the donation. We don't have to hit £1,000. It's fine. So if you are fortunate enough to be in a position where you can donate, every pound makes a difference, every penny makes a difference. So a few bucks, a few dollars, a few pounds, it really will matter. So if you could consider donating, that would be fantastic. But not everyone can, that's fine. Not everyone's in that position, and that's cool. So if you're not, if you know anyone who you think might be interested in the work that mermaids do, please send them the link, and perhaps they will donate, or pass it on to other people, and sooner or later somebody will. The more eyeballs we get on this, the better. And if you can't do either of those things, you can't donate, and you don't know anyone who would be interested, then that's fine too. Just by being here, you're increasing the numbers, you're pushing these videos, these phones, these streams up the algorithm, hopefully reaching out to more people, and perhaps one of them will donate. And that's great. So whether you are, whether you plan to donate, or share, or are just watching, in advance, on behalf of mermaids, Thank you.